Hey there, it's Wednesday. That means it's time for another video edition of Widower Wednesday. I'm Abel Keogh, author of Dating a Widower, and today we're going to discuss what you can do about friends and family of the widower who are maybe less than excited about his new relationship and less than excited about you. We'll discuss some reasons why they're acting that way, maybe what are some of the motivations behind their behavior, and then we'll discuss things that you can do to go ahead and maybe kind of help smooth things over, or maybe some things you can do to get them to open their heart a little bit for you and the widower and the new relationship that he's in. And then finally, we'll talk here about what to do about people that, despite your best efforts and despite the widower's best efforts, maybe aren't still receptive to the message and are still giving you and the widower a hard time. So first, I think the first thing you've got to remember about, again, the widower's friends, family, relatives, whoever, whoever these people are, you have to remember that if they aren't liking you, it's probably not personal. If they, are cold or distant or they don't want to invite you over, I don't think I wouldn't take, unless you've said or done something that has offended them, I honestly wouldn't take these, these slights personally. What you have to understand is that they're coming from a very emotional space, and they're still grieving. Odds are they're still grieving the loss of whatever, their mom, their daughter, their friend, their aunt, whatever. They're still grieving, and even though the widower has moved on, he's starting to date again, they haven't moved on, and they see the widower going on and dating again and starting a new life, and he may be ready to go ahead and take that step, but they're not ready to take that step. So you just got to kind of understand where they're coming from. It's not a reasonable or a logical place. It's an emotional place, and they're just not ready, to maybe accept it or do whatever you think. They're just not ready to be at the same place that the widower is. So I guess the first thing if you understand that, you've got to kind of just at least respect their decision, or at least understand that that's where they're coming from. And I think once you put it in that mindset, once you kind of interpret their actions through that lens, I think their actions will make a lot more sense to you. And it doesn't mean that they're right, and I'm not, condoning their behavior, but I'm just trying to help you understand this is where they're coming from. And the other thing you got to realize is that you can't control these people. You can't control their thoughts or their actions or anything else. And if they're going to be jerks, they're going to be jerks. So again, you gotta understand that they're not where you are. They're not where the widower is emotionally. Now, the good news is that most people eventually come around. Most people who have problems and can't stand to see the widower dating again, they eventually come around, and most of them are accepting, even if it's grudgingly accepting. Most of the time, they'll come around and realize, you know what, he's happy again. This isn't such a bad thing. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're dealing with people, where they're coming from, and generally they'll come around. Now, let's talk a little bit about things you can do to maybe go ahead and give them a reason not to hate you. And I think that's kind of an important distinction, is that you got to understand when people are in this emotional state, they're looking for a reason not to like you. They're looking for a reason not to invite you. They're looking for a reason to go ahead and shun you. And if you're going to act like a jerk, or you're going to say things or do things that, in their emotional state, in that state that they're in, they're going to use that as justification for their actions. So the first thing you got to do is not give them a reason to hate you. I mean, aside from the fact that you're, whatever, dating their dad or dating their uncle or son, or who whatever's going on there, but you can't necessarily be rude back. So my first advice here is to go ahead and be kind to these people. And I know it's hard. I know it's not always easy to smile and maybe welcome them into your home, or go over to their place and see them when there's people that are maybe ignore you, or maybe don't treat you the best, or maybe when you're there, they're constantly talking about the late wife. Oh, she was such a great person, right? And they're trying to get under your skin. So your first tactic is not to give them a reason to hate you, and by saying something mean, because then they can go back and say, "See, you're just a jerk. I knew you were a jerk," because they're looking for a reason to justify whatever their feelings are. And if you don't give them that reason, they're going to have this internal thing that whatever, this person's a jerk. She's dating, my dad, and I'm not accepting of this. But, they just can't justify their, internally, even if it goes on for a while, they can't justify their actual feelings for this. So that's the first thing is don't be a jerk, even if they're a jerk, be kind. And anyway, I'll get to some things that the widower can do later if they're still being jerks. But that's your role, is to be kind. The second thing you got to try to do is to get to know them. And I think a lot of people maybe aren't good conversationalists, or at least don't think they're good conversationalists. But I think it's really important to do your best to kind of get to know these people. What are their interests? What do they like to do? What is it about their family? Do they have kids? Do they have a career? I don't know, do they go to the same church or a different church as you? Do they belong to any organizations? And you can just kind of sit down and start chatting someone up and kind of get to know them and really focus the conversation on them and your genuine desire to maybe get to know them and maybe to understand them better. And I'd probably keep the topic off the widower and relationships and stuff like that. That's probably not the best place to go. But you can ask them, hey, I hear you're a teacher. How do you like teaching? Or hey, you have 3 kids. I don't know. Ask them about their kids. What do their kids like to do? What do they like to do? I don't know. Do they have a favorite TV show? Maybe you guys have something in common. Again, it's just trying to get to know them better, and you're doing this with the intent. I mean, obviously to disarm them, but you have to have the intent that you actually care about them. If you're being phony about it, people can pick up on that. But if you sit down with the real intent, maybe I don't know, maybe you are sitting on the couch and somebody's sitting on the couch there with them, and you just sit there and start talking to them and get to know them. Figure out what it is that they like. And people love talking about themselves. Even if they don't like you, they'll still like talking about themselves, and hopefully eventually they'll start asking questions about you and get to know you and realize that, you're just a normal person and things like that. So, figure out ways to talk to them, figure out ways to get to know them. Actually, on the Facebook group, I think just yesterday, actually, somebody was somebody had a similar question as, my widower has some daughters and we're not getting along good. And there was kind of this back and forth of what should I do? Should I call them out? Should I, I don't know, have the widower intervene? And there's some dialogue. And eventually, a suggestion was made that, why don't you invite him out to lunch or something like that? And the person invited him out to lunch, and it was kind of under the guise of, hey, I think one of the daughters was getting married or something like that, and another daughter just had a big life event, I don't know, a kid or bought a house or something like that. But again, the guise of this lunch, of this get together, was, hey, let's go out and celebrate. And at least as of now, I think one of the daughters responded positively to that. And so again, it doesn't have to necessarily be at a family activity. You can take the initiative to, to reach out to one of these people or to many people and just say, hey, let's go out to lunch. Let's just talk and do things. And again, the whole point of a lunch or whatever activity that it is you choose to go do isn't to, let's find out why you hate me. It's really just, I'm part of this family now, or I'm going to be part of this family. Let's get to know each other and let's have a good time. And I think you'll find that most people will honestly respond positively to that. Most people will not turn down an invitation to lunch or to whatever it is that you want to do. And this comes back to getting to know them. If you don't know these people well, maybe I talk to your widower. Well, what does so-and-so, you have a daughter. She doesn't, we don't get along. I want to invite her out. What does she like to do? What are some things she likes to do? And you can kind of pick your widower's brain that way if you don't have ideas. But again, the point of this is you got to make a sincere effort to go out there and do it. I guess the final point is you have to realize that despite your best efforts of being kind, inviting people out, there's always probably going to be someone who's still a jerk, and for whatever reason they want to hold on to their grief, they want to hold on to their loss, they want to hold on to their power of being mean, just because that's what they want. And so you have to realize that probably most people, I would say you're going to see 9 out of 10 people respond positively to some of these suggestions, but you're always going to have, well, hopefully not, but in case you do have a person that's that's going off and despite your best things won't talk to you, or always brings up the late wife in conversation, or shuns you or something like that, you got to realize that again, they're coming from an emotional place. They've chosen to be a jerk, so you've got to kind of let that go and hope that at some point, maybe as their grief stops and heals, that they'll have a chance maybe to kind of turn things around and open up to you a bit. So now that being said, if you find yourself in situations with this person where the person really kind of has a toxic personality, where the person, you can really tell the person's going out of their way to make you uncomfortable, to make the widower uncomfortable, to whatever, ruin the day. You don't have to be with those people, and I strongly advise that if you see yourself, that if there are people that fit that description, and for whatever reason they're not moving on, they make, when you're with them, they make parties or whatever else, family events, just a living hell, so to speak. I don't think you don't have to necessarily be at those events. But I think what you do have to do is express your concerns to the widower about that person's actions. So it's not like the widower says, hey, let's go for this family event. You're like, no. And he's like, well, how come you don't want to go? I think, you do got to explain to the widower what's going on. And I think that widowers do have a responsibility to some degree to reach out to those people, and again, despite your best efforts, if you've tried to make things good and hey, let's be friends, and they're not responding, I think at some point the widower does have an obligation to go out and say, look, we can't be attending these family events, or we're not going to be doing this because there's some issues here with this person, or ideally talking to that person and telling them, look, I don't know what's going on, but we want to come to these family events, but for reason XYZ, you are causing issues, so we're not going to go, or whatever the solution is. I don't know. Every situation is unique and complicated, and people are unique and complicated, and so throwing out generalities there. But if you decide it best not to go, the widower needs what the widower needs to do is stand up for you. He needs to have the guts to stand up to you. And basically say, or stand up to you, stand up for you. How about that? The widower needs to stand up for you and basically say, look, I value this relationship more than this event or this party or this gathering, and we can't be at an event, where my girlfriend, my wife, whatever, my fiance is shunned, and there's problems. And I think especially if you have family members that are supportive of the relationship or indifferent to the relationship, I think a lot of them will probably side with the widower. And again, whether you actually talk to that person, whether the widower talks to that person or a family member does, there's family dynamics, I don't know, but it really is up to them to bring that up. It's not really your job or your responsibility to go ahead and do that, because if it comes from you, again, they're in an emotional place, they're not in a rational place. They're going to use whatever you say as justification for their actions, and they're just going to double down on it. And let's be honest, you don't really have the influence anyway to make them even think about changing. So it has to come from someone, who they, I don't know, whoever they trust or admire in the family or their friend circle or whatever it is. That's where it really has to come from to be effective, if you understand what I'm saying. So, I don't want you to get down and think that there's no hope. There is hope. I've seen it lots of times on the Dating a Widower group on Facebook. I've seen it lots of times, through email when I give these suggestions, when people email me their questions or concerns about family members or friends that are, acting this way. Again, if you can be kind, get to know them, show genuine concern and love for them, and understand that people are people, and if they're going to be jerks, they're going to be jerks. I know in my situation, I think most people, I remarried 15 months after my late wife died, and most of my family and most of my friends and most of my late wife's family and friends, they were still grieving and they were not ready to move on. But most of them were at least supportive of the marriage. They did their best to embrace Julie in our life, and it wasn't a smooth, perfect transition, but most of them did. There was a handful that didn't for whatever reason, but I can say as of now, they've eventually come around, and we can go places. We can occasionally see friends that the late wife and I hung around with, or we can go to family events, and there's just not, there's no animosity there anymore. There's no sadness or confusion, and these things eventually go away with time. So again, don't be discouraged just because you think that, things are going to work out. Things change, people change. It's just really important that you don't give them a reason to think bad of you or think negative of you. You've just got to be you. I'm not saying not to be yourself, but just sometimes just bite your tongue and just smile and move on and don't respond is sometimes the best approach to this. And again, I think if people see that you genuinely care about them and you genuinely want to get to know them, I think you'll see a lot of walls come down, and you'll see a lot of people begin to open up to you. And the more people open up to you, I think eventually you'll see people that are accepting. Anyway, share your own comments below, your own stories below. If you have questions or comments about family members or friends or whatever that aren't accepting of the relationship, go ahead and share them below. And if you have good stories, go ahead and share those too. Also, there's a new video for you to watch. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you want updates. I'm Abel Keogh, author of Dating a Widower, and we will see you next Wednesday.